American football is a cherished pastime, offering young Black athletes a chance to chase their dreams and, for some, to break free from poverty. But beneath the surface is a hidden side to football, one that can involve exploitation and abuse. 2 years ago, a school in Ohio called Bishop Sycamore gained national attention when they faced the football powerhouse IMG Academy aired on ESPN. And the outcome was far from what anyone had anticipated. IMG won the game with a final score of 58-0, delivering a victory that was nothing short of an ass whooping. And little did people know at the time that Bishop Sycamore's legitimacy as a school was in question. HBO's latest documentary, BS High, talks about the event that led up to the game, revealing that Bishop Sycamore was not a real school, but rather a scheme built on deception.
Football is the reason that I'm here. I'm not here for education.
And as disturbing as that film was, it really got me thinking. Are we failing our Black male student athletes by not encouraging them to explore other career paths? As we dive into this issue, one thing becomes clear. It's more than just this scandal. It's really about reevaluating the system that shapes these kids' futures.
What do they call me? Loophole Leroy?
So looking at the scam of Bishop Sycamore, it demands a closer look at its mastermind, Roy Johnson. Roy is a menace, to put it lightly. As I watched, I couldn't help but pause my laptop every few minutes as I was just astounded by his shamelessness. And sadly, Roy reminds me of people that I know, possibly that you know as well. You know who I'm talking about. The ones of color who say that they stand with the community, but really they just look to pimp and profit from their community in hopes of getting money and clout. And for those who are not planning watch, I hope you do. Imagine someone who's charming, has a hint of fake Denzel Washington bravado, a dash of Kanye West self-assuredness, add Donald Trump's sense of delusion, and has some traces of Rich Paul. And it's worth noting that the men that I mentioned, as problematic as some of them are, they have money and resources. Roy doesn't, and yet boldly continues to steer this program alone.
It's my philosophy of business is do what the people who have the money do, even if you don't have the money.
So how did Roy even manage to enroll these young athletes? Bishop Sycamore was initially pitched as a second chance for athletes who play football, but they either lack the grades or the offers to move forward to college. In an interview with Graham Bessinger, former NBA Hall of Famer Charles Barkley talks about his experiences hearing the career aspirations of white students versus Black students.
I said, how many of you kids want to play pro sports? Less than 10% raised their hand. I said, what do you want to do? I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be an engineer. But when I go speak at predominantly Black schools, 90% of the kids want to play sports. 90%. There's a couple I want to be a doctor, which makes me really proud. But 90% of kids, when I speak at Black schools, our kids are brainwashed to think they can only play sports and be entertainers. You got a better chance of being a doctor and a lawyer than playing in the NBA. I tell you, there's 400 players in the NBA. What are the chances you're going to be one of the 400 best players in the world? That's, like I say, and I'm not trying to bash their dreams. I wish everybody could do it. But you have to also be realistic.
As funny as Chuck may be, he's right. But this question opens the door to larger conversations of issues related to race, class, and also the cultural influences that shape these kids' aspirations. So when you look at visible success stories, often shown in sports and entertainment, they present inspiring narratives of people who've risen above adversity to achieve fame and fortune. These stories become symbol of hope, empowering you to believe that that type of success is also attainable for them. If they can do it, why can't I? Popular culture also heavily glamorizes sports and entertainment through music, movies, and media, reinforcing this perception that it's often these fields that bring the money, the power, and the respect. And it's also important to recognize that the focus on sports and entertainment in Black communities, I think, is tied to systemic issues. So forms of structural inequality like redlining and Jim Crow left Black communities with limited resources and chances. And this translates into under-resourced schools, insufficient sports facilities, tough living conditions, and few job prospects. And despite efforts like the Brown versus Board of Education decision, which ruled that segregated schools were unconstitutional, Racial segregation effects continue, impacting the education quality of Black students. So when we look at this, like all these issues continue to cast a shadow over Black communities, showing how Roy's manipulative tactics exploited the dreams of young athletes who trusted him and believed that playing D1 football was their way forward to achieving a better life. When you watch sports, it's cool to see the stories and the performances of athletes and how they give a glimpse into who they are. The way that they're so committed to their sport really affects how they see themselves. And it all contributes to this concept of athletic identity, which is about how deeply do they connect with being an athlete and how does it mold their self confidence and self worth. And in the documentary, each student shares their unique motivations for playing football. Adrian talks about the ambition to seize opportunities and make it out. For Trian, football is more than just a sport to him, like it embodies his values of heart, drive, and dedication. Mario finds solace in escaping football, using it as a means to overcome family struggles. And Justin's reasons for playing football was because he wanted male support and discipline, given the lack of father figures in his life. When you listen to these boys' stories, you realize like it's more than just chasing those big D1 dreams. That their athletic identity is shaped by their goals, what they value, their cultural background, and their own unique take on what success looks like. It not only paints a full picture of who they are, not just as athletes, but as people off the field.
All of these schools exist for the same purpose, which is to play football. And education or taking care of the kids or any of that stuff is secondary.
I watched the documentary, there was a dilemma that tends to happen when you're trying to be the best and a top tier athlete. This concept called the athletic academic paradox. Like, it's this tension where Black young males are getting all this encouragement to be awesome athletes. But obviously, that's going to come at the expense of your education. Like, you're being told to be the next LeBron James or the next Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, but not necessarily the next Neil deGrasse Tyson or Barack Obama. And I think this is mainly part due to racism. And we can see that in the education sector, teachers tend to have lower expectations for Black students in the classroom. They're praised for their athleticism, but not necessarily for their intellectual contributions. And this obsessive focus on sports doesn't just limit individual potential, it also ripples effects on the education system and the community. We start to see what's known as academic deconstruction, where the classroom takes the backseat. Homework, tests, other skill building activities, they all seem less important next to the allure of just maybe, I can be a D1 athlete and go pro. And in the case of Bishop Sycamore, that's exactly what happened. Like, students, they weren't attending any classes and they were often left to fend for themselves when they were promised that they were going to get personalized academic support. You know, when we keep telling these young guys to chase their dreams on the fields and on the court, I really can't help but wonder, like, what about their other dreams? I mean, let's be real. Not everyone's going to make it to the NFL or the NBA. I read somewhere that the NCAA says that only 2% of its college players actually go pro. Another study mentions a quarter of student athletes say they don't even get chances to explore other careers. We also know when it comes to graduating, our Black student athletes are falling behind and they're graduating at lower rates than other students. Now, hear me clearly. I'm not saying that they shouldn't play sports. That would be hypocritical, as I love sports. I'm talking about sports. I'm wearing my Patriots gear. Shout out to Tom Brady. But what I'm saying is that we need to make sure that our Black male youth have more than just their game to rely on, because what happens if things don't go as planned? And that's why I think it's important for Black student athletes, especially those from urban backgrounds, to really hold, as much as you can, to hold athletics and academics in high regard and not just one as a means to an end. Family, coaches, peers, they also play a role by providing guidance in different areas, and that can help Black males build resilience and confidence, which also helps them to thrive on the field and also off the field. A study called Place, Race, and Sports really digs into the experiences of young Black males in high school sports. What really stood out to me as I was reading was their drive for their careers beyond just athletics. The study interviews Jerry. He's a senior from Chicago at the time. He shares his background and also his education and social goals. I want to finish college and then also finish grad school. When asked on the topic of playing in the NBA, Jerry shares his plan to navigate that and another career. If I'm lucky to get drafted within my college years, I can get my degree and go to grad school, having a pediatrician career as a backup if needed. I do think that this quote highlights how academics and athletics don't have to be at odds with one another, and that having a plan can help prepare athletes for various careers. There's a strong pull towards D1 schools because of the prestige and also what they offer. But with football, as we've seen, and the money involved, it can be tough for young athletes to spot like when they might be getting exploited. Have you seen those NIL deals? That is a lot of money for a teenager. And when you see how your talent could change your family's future, you can feel excitement, but also pressure at the same time. And the boys that attended BS, oh my God. I can't stop laughing because it really is BS. The boys that attended BS were initially finessed by a first-class flight, 5-course meals, and then a facility that the school didn't even own. And it wasn't until joining the program they realized, like, it's not what I signed up for.
People were sharing helmets because we were lied to, saying that we had equipment on the way.
He showed me enough to where I knew how to trust him. Like I could trust in Coach Roy to come in clutch. It was like having an uncle on the field with you, like that big cool uncle. Like it's like he was just like one of us.
He would try to be buddy with the kids, telling them things that he does, making it seem like it's okay to get away with that type of stuff.
Black boys aspiring to play D1 football should evolve their skills and understanding of the game through each stage. So the fundamentals that you learn in your neighborhood league shouldn't be the same skill level when you reach a prep school or a local high school. And the way that Bishop Sycamore was advertising itself, it should have been a level up from the coaching experience that these athletes got when they were at their local high school. This is just my opinion. I feel like coaches who haven't played at the highest level or even coached alongside someone who played at the highest level or went to like a high level school, unfortunately, they cap the potential of their student athletes. And then for the lucky ones who have the raw talent, who come from the hood and get scouted, they attend magnet or prep schools that have strong athletic and also strong academics. And I think this combination increases the odds of securing a D1 opportunity. Now, I mentioned I love sports, mainly basketball and football. I watch both on the pro and the college level. I love the teamwork, the competition, the rivalries, the stories, the sheer will. It's incredible. And this is going to be a bold take, but I would have done a better job than Roy. Yes, I'm standing 10 toes down. I don't really care what you got to say to me. The fact that this man and his coaching staff couldn't even go on YouTube to look at drills and coaching plays is laughable. In fact, he put all of his players in harm's way when they played 2 games in the span of 3 days. That is wild. And given what we know about the physicality of football, you're only one hit away from getting CTE or ending your season or your career. If I were a parent of a child considering a program like Bishop Sycamore, I'd make sure we ask questions to see if it was a good fit. Because just like recruiters seek specific athletes, I think student athletes can and should ask questions like, what's the program's history? Who are the coaches and what's their experience? What's the team like? What's the culture of the program? Since you started this program and it's going to help me get into a D1 school, what's the graduation rate? What's your connects? How do you support athletes off the field? Maybe I just asked a lot of questions, but Roy's lack of coaching experience, what we've seen in the documentary, should have raised alarms for many students and their families. The situation is complex and jacked up. These kids grew up in urban, challenging neighborhoods and might have not had a lot of exposure to these types of scenarios and or critical thinking skills. I really don't want to sound elitist. I'm of the personal belief that critical thinking skills is a skill that needs to be nurtured and taught. But I do think this combination of their circumstances and having this one-track mind of playing D1 football may have made them vulnerable to someone like Roy the con coach. To address this, I think it's on families, teachers, mentors, coaches to instill critical thinking as much as we do as the athletics. We need to equip our young athletes with the ability to challenge what they hear, dig for truths, and make choices with the bigger picture in mind. And with these skills, they won't just get caught up in D1 dreams, but they'll also make choices that set them up for success in all areas in life. At the end of the documentary, the youth expressed sorrow and regret for attending Bishop Sycamore as they realized that their D1 aspirations had crumbled before their eyes. This was the saddest part of the documentary because you see some students like really trying their hardest not to cry. One student had had his college offer rescinded because of his involvement with the school. And just to see Roy so heartless and uncaring was maddening to watch. But I want these young men to remember there are other paths to success. In preparing for this video, I was wondering if there were any former NFL players who do a traditional career. One that came to mind is Myron Rolle, who got drafted out of FSU, became a Rhodes Scholar during his senior year, played in the NFL for 3 seasons, and then pursued a career as a Harvard neurosurgeon. And last year, he was a guest on the Pivot podcast, and he said something that everyone, especially Black student athletes, can take heed to.
You know, I think for me, man, the pivot from going from one chapter of life to another is so important. It's not something that happens overnight, right? This was like a thought about process. This was premeditated. This was something that we worked towards. And if anyone wants to box you into a category that says you only can do one or the other, refute that, deny that, move away from that and say, look, I can be what I want to be. I can continue to develop as an athlete, as a student, as a leader, as a thinker. All these things can coexist in your body as long as you have that rhythm, have that pace, and take things 2% at a time.
From a historical perspective, we can see a legacy of Black people being viewed as commodities for entertainment and financial gain, shedding light on the exploitations that students at schools like Bishop Sycamore receive. And I think it also reminds us that the journey from school to sports is deeply tied to larger societal issues. Recognizing this, we understand that Black student athletes are Black student males and not solely defined by their athletic abilities. They have dreams, they have values and determinations that shape who they are. And Myron Rolle's journey from the NFL to being a neurosurgeon shows that even the pivot in itself can be a remarkable achievement. So as we reflect on the school to sports pipeline and also its implication for Black male athletes, we need to recognize their limitless potential. We need to encourage them and guide them towards a future where they can excel in many incredible ways.